my first question to you is, so what does computer science mean to you?
Um, so that's an interesting question. So there's a real puzzle. So obviously everyone has used a computer, like from your phone to your tablet to like even things you wouldn't expect to have a computer in them, like a rice cooker or a tea kettle. They all have computers in them now. Um, and but when you study computer science as a academic discipline, there's sort of a whole new levels that are opened up to you. So like fundamentally a computer is a piece of rock that we've tricked into doing arithmetic really fast. And you might think, okay, adding and subtracting and multiplying numbers isn't that exciting a thing. But when you do it fast enough and you do it in just the right way, you can get the computer to do amazing things. Like this video we're recording now, if you take my phone, I can just talk at it and it'll transcribe the things I'm saying as I go along. And somehow that's like a piece of silicon that's doing arithmetic really fast. And this this is quite surprising, and also somebody had to make it do that. So it's not like uh, like we think about these big corporations like Google and Apple and Facebook and all these things, and they they sell us these computers and they present it to the world as like some sort of seamless experience that's
Yeah,
delivered from the gods themselves to the rest of us. But actually people had to build these things, and at the and in computer science we like study how to do that. And so um, there's this sort of scientific aspect of how do you get engineering aspect of how do you get silicon to do arithmetic really fast, and then some human being has to think about and understand how to get this raw capability into something that people find useful.
yeah,
So like research is called the theory of programming languages. So a computer does arithmetic very quickly, and we want to use it to do something that's actually useful for humans. And so we need to translate instructions at a human level into instructions that a computer can understand. And the what I do is to study precisely that problem. And
right.
it sort of surprises me still, like to this day, that you start this and you think, okay, this is sort of a psychological problem. Like, how do you understand people and translate what they want to do into instructions for a machine? And then when you study this problem in depth, like it connects to like everything in logic and mathematics and philosophy. And so you know like the other day I was reading like some ancient Buddhist philosophy, and I was reading it to get some inspiration for designing a new programming language. And that's
Oh
the sort of
wow.
connection you wouldn't expect to happen. And partly it's because we have to draw on any intellectual resource we've got in order to build these devices. But like partly it's human nature hasn't changed. And so people are the same as we've always been, and we have this radically new technology, and so we have to bring these two things together.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Really interesting to hear you talk about how the objects that we use in everyday life, the really when do you think about the software behind them? When do you think about the thinking behind them, the humanistic element
Yeah.
and the actual technical way, the technical element of making it happen? And it's really interesting to hear that computer science is essentially the fusing of those two elements,
Hmm.
and that's where your research lies too. So what is when when students come to Trinity, what does this fusing of those humanistic and technological elements look like?
So you know Cambridge and is one of the great medieval universities. And so let me back up a little bit. Like I studied in the US before I moved to the United Kingdom. And one of the things that's very different at Cambridge and at Trinity is how personal the teaching is. So,
Mm.
I was at a good university in the US, but it was a sort of an industrial process. Like 1,000 students come in every year, and if you want to interact with the university, it's always through some bureaucratic process.
Right.
But but over here, uh, the interaction that students have with us as lecturers and supervisors is much more intimate. So
Mm.
when students study, they'll have the usual lectures, but there's also a lot of these supervisions where you meet other scientists on like a one-on-one or two-on-one or three-on-one basis, and so there's a lot more chance for interaction and also building relationships, and that's something I really appreciate.
Right. Brilliant. Yeah. So much more personal element than you might get at other universities.
Hmm.
And so what can students actually expect to do on a computer science degree program here?
So the way that the degree program works is, there's a common core that everyone has to understand, and then once you've got that, the program becomes more individualized. So the first year, everyone takes the same courses. um, you go through the program more or less the way we tell you to. And in the second year, you know there's a large component which is standard, and then an additional bit which is up to the student to choose based on their own interests. And then in the final year, it's almost entirely like how you see yourself going based on the things you've learned and the
Mm.
other experiences you've had.
So you've got much more choice opening up to you as you go through the course.
Yeah, and I mean partly this is, you know once a student has learned what's available, they can make an informed choice about what really speaks to them.
Absolutely. And so the people, the students who are sitting at home thinking, well, how on earth am I going to bridge that gap from where I am now in year 13, or studying
Mhm.
in A level? What is it? What's it gonna? What do I need to do to be able to be ready for the first year of university here, or indeed, what do they learn in year one to maybe just try and um, make it not seem quite as daunting as perhaps it might do?
Yeah, so I guess if I had like one piece of advice here, I would say, focus on like mathematics at A levels. So we're a computer science department, so teaching things like programming and the computer science aspects is what we're here for. But an awful lot of uh, what is studied and what's taught in the computer science department is built on a foundation of mathematics. So you basically can't get too much of it at the A level. So even things you might expect to be more qualitative, like human computer interaction, those are all built on like a foundation of statistics and user studies. Like you do conduct experiments on users and
Right.
analyze the results using statistics. So everywhere in computer science, sort of the common language is mathematics. So
Okay.
you can't do you can't do too little of that.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So critical to be good at your maths. And
Mhm.
what would they do in year one of the undergraduate degree? What are the modules look like?
Yeah, so in year one of the undergraduate degree, there's going to be it, it's as I said, it's the basic foundations of computer science, and so it's going to be a pretty broad, diverse curriculum covering everything from databases to graphics to artificial intelligence, along with a good solid foundation in many different programming languages. Um, and of course there's also a mathematics component that everyone gets.
Mm. So you're sort of the platform on which to become creative in
Yeah.
the later years. That makes a lot of sense. And would you say there's a strong connection between what they're going to study there in year one and what they do at A level, or is it sort of entirely new content?
um so it's new content, but it builds on what you learn at A levels.
Okay.
So um it's how do you put this, like what's studied at A level is not going to be, it's not going to be like year 14, because it's a new way, it's a new way of teaching and studying.
Yeah.
And um,
So how
you
so how would they prepare? What's the best way for student for prospective students to prepare for computer science?
Okay, so I've already mentioned the mathematics, but one thing that
Yeah,
is worth doing if you can is to actually learn how to program, either in a course setting or like out of a course setting, because since it's a computer science degree, there will be a lot of programming in it, and if it turns out that you either really like it or you're not so enthusiastic about it, it's good to know that ahead of time.
fantastic. Yeah. And are there any other, are there any other A levels in particular that you look for in order to apply for computer science? I know you mentioned maths, and
Yeah,
so
maths and further maths are sort of essential.
yeah,
Um, and then aside from that, like we look at things like, any of the other sciences are helpful too, like physics especially, because that's a good example of something where you apply some of the mathematics you've learned.
fantastic. It's very helpful. And so, what would you say is the best thing about studying computer science at Cambridge or at Trinity?
Uh, so the two best things I think are, you know, there's you know, the the personal interaction with us. So it's fun for me to, like, meet young people who are like sort of blossoming, and the other thing is that um, the quality of your peers is like absolutely top notch.
Mm,
And the this is one of these things where like your sense of the possible is sort of expanded by what your peers are doing, because like I mean, I'm not like how do I say this, like unfortunately I'm not so young anymore, and so when a 18-year-old sees me, he's not going to think, oh, I could be like that. But when you see your classmates who are
mm,
your same age, and they're doing like something fantastic with robots, like that really sparks it inside of you. Oh, I could do something like that. And so um you know it's a it's a kind of rising tide lifts all boats. So the quality of your peer interactions is like really spectacular, and I think it's like really good for a lot of students.
brilliant, right? So yeah, so the fact that you have such brilliant people around you and who are teaching you, I think you're being a little bit
Yeah.
modest there, but the fact that you're surrounded by such brilliance in all areas, I think it's a really great place to thrive on
Hmm.
the talent that you have. That's really interesting. And would you say so? These when you come out when you come out of a computer science degree at Trinity, what sort of careers do some of your students go on to, or what are the potential career options coming from doing a degree in computer science?
Well, I mean, as I said before, like computers are everywhere, and so there's a lot of different things that students go on to do. There's the obvious career at a program as a programmer, and a lot of our students go on to work at very good firms like Google or things like that. But once you have these computing skills, like you could do all kinds of things. So like last year, one of my students, he was feeling really worried about like the global climate crisis, and
Yeah,
he saw like all these kids doing the climate striking, and he said, okay, well, how can I help? And what he did was he built like this online learning system, um, for teaching about the climate. So
fantastic.
when children went to their teachers in like year 3 or year 4 and said, "What's going on? What is CO2? How does it work?" He was able to like contact teachers and say, "Look, we've got this online course that I've built, where we have all kinds of age appropriate information for kids, so that they can understand what's going on. Like, we've digested the scientific literature into a form that children can understand and
Yeah,
access. And so he was showing it to teachers all over the country and all over Europe.
absolutely
And
brilliant.
so you can see this isn't directly computer science, but the the sort of computing infrastructure you need to make that possible is an example of the kind of thing that becomes possible.
Amazing, yeah. So really, it shows how powerful the grounding in the subject can be to take on real world issues.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. I think most of us would agree. There's nothing more important than climate change. So what a fantastic initiative to take part in. And so finally, if you could give one tip to someone who's thinking about applying to Trinity to study computer science, what would that tip be?
Um, so I guess the tip would be like, once you get to university, like the word university is sort of based on the idea that all of knowledge is here. So it's the study of the universe, literally. And so we'll teach you a lot of computer science, but Trinity is a college, and you'll get to meet people from studying all different kinds of subjects. And this is a this is a fantastic opportunity to not just study computer science, but sort of the entire breadth of human knowledge. And wherever you go for university, you should take advantage of that. But being at a collegiate university makes that especially easy.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you very much.